I love your question, because when a conflict comes up, I think probably many people on the call, we can get a show of hands. How many of you sometimes think if they just had the information, if they could see my good intentions, if they just understood me, this conflict would go away? Yes. So there's at least a whole bunch of people who can relate with this, including myself. So the first thing I want to say is that's not necessarily a bad or a wrong thing to do. And there are always times where that might be the fix. Like, there are no absolutes when we're talking about human relationships and communication strategies, right? There are no absolutes. So with the caveat that depending upon the relational context between you and this person, if the unmet need that's driving the conflict is lack of information, if that's really the driver, then providing information is the most aligned strategy. 99% of the time, we're not in conflict because of a lack of information. That's not usually what's driving the conflict. But if that is the thing driving the conflict, then you want to provide information. Okay? So the comment that I made, just to give people a little bit of context, because I want to give you context for that comment and then explain it a little bit further, was about when we have a lot of emotional reactivity that is coming up, when we're feeling triggered, when there's a charge that comes up in us around something that happened with an other person. And this was in the context of partners. I think it was a husband and wife. And the wife was feeling very angry and wanted to figure out how to talk to her husband about her anger. And what I said in that situation, specifically in that situation, is you're not ready for a conversation yet. And when we, and so this is one of the checkpoints you can use for yourself, which is when we are, when our pain is stimulated, our impulse is to get some understanding and empathy from the other person. That's what we are needing. And so when we're going into a conversation with our unmet needs, trying to recruit the other person into meeting those needs, that's not always the wisest choice. Sometimes it can work. I'm not saying you can't try that sometimes, but what I would recommend is, the way my rule of thumb would be, when your stuff gets triggered, take it to your therapist, take it to your empathy buddy, take it to your community of support, take it to your spiritual director, take it to your life coach, take it to your AA sponsor, whoever it is, take it to a third party who isn't going to hear about your pain through their defensiveness, because they are going to be feeling like you're telling them they caused your pain. To the degree that the other person is perceiving that you're, whether you're doing it or not, but if their perception is that you're making them responsible for your pain, it's going to be very hard for them to give you the thing you're needing, which is empathy and understanding. So often it's wiser to go and get the empathy and understanding you need from someone else, to fill yourself up, to do your own emotional work, and to come back into a conversation with a desire to understand the other person first. So often I'll say the way that we know we're ready for a high stakes conversation is when I feel resourced enough to empathize with you, dear other person, as much as you are needing before we get to me. And if I have a lot of urgency about me and you are the stimulus for my pain, it brings a lot of challenge to that conversation. The amount of consciousness that you need to be able to manage that conversation is very high. Can it be done? Of course it can be done. Yes, for those of you who are wanting to do high level practice and you're really stretching, of course it can be done. That is what we're all practicing for. We want to be strong enough to be able to do that. But on a practical level, I find that where most people are actually functioning, they're not able to do that yet. And there's not a lot of wisdom in trying to make people give you empathy when they are not able to. And it's not wise to then decide that unless this one person can give me the empathy, I'm screwed. Like there's no wisdom in that. So if you know you're needing understanding and empathy, go get it. And sometimes it's not from the person that you're having the conflict with in the early stages. And I would say that to both people. You know, if we're talking about a conflict between a dyad, I would recommend that both people go and get their own awareness and emotional healing work so that they can bring to one another more consciousness, more compassion, more empathy, more self-understanding. Another option, sometimes people don't want to wait and there's some urgency. Another option, just so you have this move available to each of you, is to make the incongruence explicit by making the inner conflict explicit. I'm going to try and have this conversation with you because I feel like it's important. I'm aware that I'm kind of overriding and fragmenting and containing some things inside of me, and I might come across a little awkward and edgy, and that's what's happening. You know, so you can also just name I'm trying to keep the part of me that is really angry and judgmental or whatever. That's not what you're saying, but that would be what I'm saying, right? I'm trying to keep that part a little bit under wraps, and I'm trying to be more skillful, and you're going to feel a little bit of a disconnect. And I want to name that, because if I don't, it might really erode the trust between us, because you won't know what's going on and what I'm really saying. So here's what's happening. So that can be another move that allows for presence and authenticity without expecting yourself to be like uber enlightened before you can do any of this. Because if we had to wait until we were all good at it, we'd get nowhere, right? So we want to learn how to work with ourselves and with other people as we are. As we are. You're fine as you are, with all your wounds and all your reactivity.